Hello everyone. Today's video we're going to talk about root cause analysis. Root cause analysis is something that's important in every aspect of manufacturing, but also in business. Finding out the root cause of an issue, sometimes it's related to relationship and man. Sometimes it's related to the machine, the material, management methods, the environment. All of those things. And so I feel like we're going to take some concrete examples and look at some tools that are utilized in root cause analysis. If you have someone that's gifted in root cause analysis, then a lot of this stuff will come instinctually to them like a sixth sense. And I think that's the value when you have an external auditor, is it seems like they have what they call the auditor's touch. It's how did they know something was wrong? Well, they didn't have a magical touch. They weren't just lucky to happen upon something. The root cause analysis is so ingrained upon them that as they hear things that don't make sense, they know how to unpack those a little deeper and start asking those 5 whys. And so I think 5 whys is a great place for anyone to start, even if you don't have a Six Sigma background. And this is an example of some 5 whys, and this 5 why analysis states that don't just ask why, but let your why lead to the next question. So tires were blowing out in this example after 20,000 miles. So why are tires blowing out after 20,000 miles? The sidewalls were too thin. Why are the sidewalls too thin? The calipers were worn out of tolerance. Why are the calipers worn out of tolerance? The calibrating technician used incorrect procedures. Why did he do that? Because there wasn't a transition plan and someone else filled in for that role. And so when someone else filled in, they didn't really get the adequate training. And so the root cause comes down to a training issue that impacted the end user, but really it was a continuity plan issue that happened upstream, and someone left the company, and the HR person was laid off in this example, and so the transition plan wasn't executed properly. And that points to a value in onboarding and offboarding and continuity. If you don't have a continuity plan, that's something you ought to think about. But this was a great example. Here's another way to illustrate the 5 whys. So our client is refusing to pay for leaflets that we printed. Anyone that's been in printing knows the value of on-time merchandise. Especially I came from the sign and tag business. If something was late, then the price was wrong, then you've got a weights and measures issue. So it wasn't unusual for us to realize that we had a drop-dead timeline. So why are they refusing to pay for it? The delivery was late, so the leaflets couldn't be used. Why couldn't they be? Why were the leaflets late? The job took longer than expected. Generally, when you're working with 5 whys, sometimes you get these filler answers that aren't as in depth, and sometimes people who are really adept and attuned to the 5 whys would skip a step like this to say, oh, well, it took longer. Well, why did it take longer? I mean, we know that it was late because we ran out of printer ink. So then why did we run out of printer ink? Well, we had an emergency last-minute job that jumped in and it threw off all of our planning. And so we didn't have enough ink in stock, and we couldn't order new supplies in time. When you're in a quick-turn industry, then that leaves very little time to notify the customer. When you're in a longer lead time industry, like machine parts, you're going to see some of these things happen a week or 2 out, and a lot of the buyers will appreciate anything that you can throw their way as far as information and timeline. Everyone's got padded timelines along the ways. Even internally, there's padded timelines. Ideally, you want to remove those because they're a form of waste, and you're not working on the same trust factor that you are with the rest of your team. But it happens, and it happens to you as a supplier, and it happens internally as well. So So the countermeasure, the fix for this root cause is let's find an ink supplier who can deliver on short notice that we can continue to minimize inventory, reduce waste, and respond to customer demand. So notice the solution is not let's just have 500 cartridges of every style of ink on hand. The solution isn't always to spend money. Sometimes the solution, or more often than not, the solution is supplier relations. So let's look at a few other things here. So if you've never seen a fishbone diagram, this is a fishbone diagram. And so it's a guidance tool to try and help you find the root cause of the problem. And so as you unpack these things, could the equipment have been an issue? If it was, then what was it? And you start to prioritize these causes and unpack them. Sometimes it's more than one cause, or sometimes it's a symptom disguised as a cause. And so thinking holistically about the whole environment, you may think, oh, well, we've got a machine equipment problem because we're getting arcing in our print. But really that's an environment variable. Your humidity is too low to be printing. You may think you have an equipment problem because you've got thermal expansion in your metal. Well, that also could be an environment problem that, you're machining it and it's 100 degrees and, 50% humidity outside, and then you bring it into quality and it's 70 degrees and it sits there overnight before it can be inspected and thermal expansion is at play. And that's an environment issue. So again, there's overlap in these things. So there's some great examples here. A car not starting. So why did the car not start? Was there no gas in the car? Did we lose the keys? Was the wrong type of fuel? Was there no oil in the car? These are all possible reasons that a car didn't start. Was there a dead battery? And then when you unpack dead battery, did someone leave the lights on? Was there, a relay got stuck? A bad interlock or switch on the door, electrical? Is the car worn out? Is it a lemon? Was it material? Is it out of tune? Is there no antifreeze? Do they not know how to start it? Is it a rental car? Some cars have push buttons now like they used to have in the 40s and 50s. The environment. Is it too cold? If you've ever dealt with a carbureted car and in sub-zero temperatures, you understand the value of the car being too cold to start. Were parts stolen off the car? Did it get wet in the rain? There's a lot of electronic components, and if they're not sealed correctly, then that could cause an issue with the car starting. All of these are possible ways or reasons or root causes for the car not to start. But you have to kind of start to analyze what these things are. And then I got one more I'd like to look at. And this again goes back to the 5 whys, but every time that there's an additional why, it unpacks it to a greater degree. And so you notice that this why has 2 more whys, and this why has 4 more whys, and et cetera, et cetera. That it goes on. So the revenue budget was not balanced. Why? Well, the costs were too high or the income was too low. Could be either of those. Why were the costs too high? Well, staffing was 86% of our budget. The premises cost 8.5%. Let's keep going down with this one. Partners are 70%. Low number of support staff. Not enough internal training. On-site staff was a low percentage. We didn't anticipate the 5-year routine maintenance or preventative maintenance plan, and so we just didn't see how that was going to come to fruition. You get a machine or you get a new car or what, and you put it on the floor, and it's going to work great for the first year. It's over time that the maintenance starts to save you money, but it costs money to spend money, and preventative maintenance for a lot of places is a difficult thing to swallow. Because it's not an immediate thing, it's an unknown future thing. If a car runs 100,000 miles or 200,000 miles, eventually the car is going to break down 300,000 miles. The better you maintain it, the better it runs. But there's a break-even analysis, and there's a point where you're throwing good money after bad money, and sometimes people just chance it. Staffing was stable. There's a large number of measurement points, decisions by management, historic employ, own cleaning staff at high rates, the cleaners, local people, a strong connection to the company, people are jumping queue. Still got 3 years left. Underestimated the time frame of it. So this 5 why is a valuable thing. So this all comes down to the root cause analysis. So remember, if you haven't done it, start doing it. Start making notes. One for me in the printing industry was to use something like a fishbone diagram, because there's different systems in the machine. And so starting to understand which system was breaking down. Was it diffuser? Was it a zero graphics? Was it a sensor? Was it an interlock? Was it a stuck relay? And starting to understand which of these equipment were breaking down there, and then cutting those in half and starting to weed those things out. And again, like I said, something can be a symptom and be disguised as a root cause, and that happened a lot. If you get a printer jam and it says, oh, well, it jammed over, at the 45th foot of the printer, but the root cause was really back at the feeder. That's one of those things where it's just like you have to know it, you have to have experience. Sometimes you can go online and you can search knowledge groups. It's good to have relationships in the industry, phone a friend, so to speak. But root cause is huge. Root cause is huge in business. It's huge in manufacturing. And training is oftentimes a root cause. So investing in that training, which costs time and money up front, pays dividends downstream. Training and cross-training are a huge part of continuity and are a huge part of everyone's continuity plan. All right, thanks for listening.